Was he really a vegan?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a thing. Let's see. Was Hitler a vegan?
let's say it and then fact check it after.
Oh, I think maybe he was just a vegetarian. Let's see.
That's close enough.
Yeah, he was a vegetarian. He was a vegetarian.
It's close enough. It's close enough.
There's this whole thing around white supremacy and veganism. Do you know about this? There's this like whole fucking thing.
What up, world? Welcome back to another episode of the AmeriPodcast, episode 146.
Yeah, baby.
We've got the original cast in the house tonight. It's Monday, 6:49 p.m. For those of you listening in the future.
Which is everybody.
Turns out.
Yeah. We've got some Russia and Navalny updates for y'all. But before that, we have some updates on gun control measures and some unfortunately recent shootings that have occurred again.
Police,
Yes.
murders.
There's just a lot of death with guns.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
Turns out.
it's kind of like we got to talk about it again, but we have to.
We're going to talk about it again.
We're doing it. We're going to try and make it as good as possible.
Got to eat your vegetables.
I think we should make a shirt, that's a play off of the old guns don't kill people, people kill people. It just should be like guns do kill people, guns do kill people. That's it. Just on the front and the back.
Yeah.
Guns do kill people.
Or just guns kill more efficiently than knives.
Mhm.
In hands. Yeah.
Or like people kill people. People use guns. Therefore, guns kill people. All right, it's transitive property. All right.
I like the logic chain there.
Also, maybe we shouldn't be doing policy by like logical, whatever those are called that I'm forgetting. Anyways, just
Not
like
an English podcast. Let's
doing policy by like fun little wordplay is something that conservatives do really well, but it turns out is not actually always good policy.
Yeah, weird. Weird how that works.
Before we get started, I'll introduce the crew, the usual crew. If you're not familiar with them already, we have in the Denver metro area, John Kelly. Hello, sir. How are you this evening?
Good. Looking out, seeing some moisture in the Denver metro area.
Yeah, we're getting
Love
snow,
it.
baby. Let's go.
2 snowstorms in the last week, which is,
We
I
are.
feel like, more than we've gotten since like December. So
No, we
it's great.
had that really.
Well, we had that huge one.
Yeah.
We had the huge one.
I've had a couple down here in spring. I feel like it's been pretty snowy down here. I notice it a lot because my dogs track in mud and it makes me great.
And that is also our other Denver correspondent, John Anderson, if you couldn't tell. Hello, sir. How are you doing?
Oh, hi. I'm good. I because this is going to be a mostly depressing podcast, I wanted to bring back the fun fact real quick for everybody. According to Brendan Batchelor, who I'm hoping is a real person now that I'm looking at the name, the Canucks tonight can pick up their 69th win. Or no, I'm sorry, tomorrow night.
Point.
The Canucks can pick up their 69th win against the Leafs tomorrow on 420. I just wanted everybody to know that.
So fucking nice.
I think you're thinking points. I think you're
Thank you
thinking
very
points,
much.
not wins.
No, their 69th all-time win against the Leafs.
Oh, all time. Oh, I see what
sorry,
you're saying.
sorry.
Okay.
The Canucks can pick up their 69th all-time win tomorrow on 420 against the
Nice.
Leafs.
So
Tune in.
nice.
Yeah.
So nice.
Yeah.
That's your
You
fun
hear,
fact
you hear
for
that,
today.
Canadian listeners? Oof.
And also with us, our West Coast correspondent, Mr. Grillo, Tyler Grillo. How are you this evening?
I'm doing all right. Heavy topics, but I'm in my full cat daddy vibe right now because I have a sweatshirt on that has a cat eating a taco and a piece of pizza, and I also have one of my cats on my lap. Pretty fantastic. So there we
A
are.
cat eating both a taco and pizza is the most Grillo thing I have ever heard of.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It did
Yeah,
come
easily.
from an in-law, so it's
Thank you for dressing appropriately.
always.
And I'm your host, Blake Mannion. Not wearing anything cat-like at all. Just
Nailed. Nailed it.
All right. Well, now that we got that out of the way, let's start off with the unfortunate shooting of Adam Toledo that happened just a few days ago in Chicago. This was a 13-year-old boy who was shot unarmed by a cop. And it's been very disturbing video footage that was released to watch. And yeah, it's just, how does this keep happening? You know, as we watch the Chauvin trial wrap up.
Yeah.
Well, and we've seen, really, I think this topic is about guns, because we've seen a lot of mass shootings as America has begun opening up, which apparently the only thing that can prevent mass shootings in America is a literal once-in-a-century global pandemic. But we are back and we are in full swing. I'm sure most of you have seen that graphic floating around of all of the mass shootings that have happened in different cities over the last, 30 days or whatever. It's just insane. And so
There is. Yeah.
And then we have this other problem. So we have this one problem of a highly armed citizenry, and then on the other side we have a militarized police that do not understand how to use of force properly in a lot of cases. And I don't think either of these problems, I think that they are part of the same problem, which is a militarized society that we have, and everybody needs to de-escalate. And I don't think the police are going to be able to de-escalate until the citizens de-escalate, and vice versa. And so it comes down to, guns are the problem. Like, this does not happen in any other equivalent country. Other Western countries have the same equivalent mental health that we do. It comes down to the fact that we have a shitload of guns in this country with a shitload of ammunition, and people are going to continue to die at very high rates. It's not that there won't be violent incidents that happen, but people will continue to die at really high rates until we fix this, and we won't be able to properly address our police problem until we do that. So this is a gigantic problem that we're gonna need to really work on.
Yeah, and then
100%.
And Toledo is it's just so tragic. And that cop was, chasing him, which is like a thing, like, chasing and after and shooting someone. Like, it's like, what kind of training is that? With the murder of Dante Wright also, which, is obviously happening also nearby in the Twin Cities and that whole area. So with the trial of Derek Chauvin, it's very charged. There was it was him, right, where they were trying to tase him, but grabbed the gun, or was it Toledo? It was one of the two.
It wasn't Toledo.
It was Dante Wright, but I think that it's like, how could you make that mistake? And like, obviously there are like questions around that, but it's like, I think it also goes back to like police reform in general. The training is not good enough. Like, I understand that there are two things that you can grip, but like, I don't care. I don't care if they look exactly the same. You should have training enough to know which is on your right hip and which is on your left hip or whatever. I also just feel like, John, your point here is like, there's a space in this for mutual de-escalation, right? Like, mutual disarmament, right? Like, one of the reasons that police force feels like they need to be so militarized, other than just power, is that there's such a well-armed citizenry. And, in other countries, there are many police forces, in all countries, obviously, there are many police forces in other countries that do not have the same amount of weaponry. Some cops don't always walk around with a gun. Cops always have guns in the US. There are some that don't always have guns. And why is that possible? Is because their citizenry doesn't have as many guns either, right? And so there's this, I think that was a good point, John, and just like, in terms of just like police reform more broadly, I feel like that is one of many things that needs to happen. But it's like, those two could go together, right? There could be like a disarmament of the citizenry that also goes along with the disarmament of police.
I think you can make a sympathetic case for the police, broadly speaking, in this, right? Like, I can understand being freaked out when every interaction you have with a citizen, you're like, does this person have a gun, and are they going to try and shoot me? And that happening over and over and over again, and then on top of like not having sufficient training, I can understand that, terrible things happen. That's not to, especially like in the Derek Chauvin case, leave everybody off, but I want to be sympathetic as much as possible in this discussion to everybody involved, because that's how you get to mutual de-escalation, right?
Yeah,
and so like I get it with the police, but we've got to, and then, you know, I think on the other side, like, let's, like teachers, make them professionals and make it really difficult to be a cop, and then also pay them a shitload of money because we give them tools that can kill people. So maybe we should make an investment in them.
Right. Well, and I mean, across the communities in general is really what you need. And that's what's so really unfortunate currently. And I think a lot of the national discourse when it comes to the defunding of the police and that discussion in general is because a lot of people, especially on the right, have taken that and ran with it and said that, oh, what they want is to have anarchy in cities. You want chaos in cities. You want chaos on your front lawn. You want cops that are unarmed, untrained, and they won't be able to stop somebody from coming into your house and killing you. That's the narrative, right? When the conversation that true reformers are trying to have is that, why don't we redistribute some of this stuff that we have? Do they really need to have 10 armored cars and SWAT gear to respond to regular crime that happens in a city? No, they do not. Right? Do they need better training? Yes, they do. Do we need more social workers to deal with people who have mental health issues that are dealing with other things? So police aren't responding to 100 different things when really they should be responding to 5 or 10 type of situations that they're really trained for, right? And that's it's so disheartening about the conversation in general, because you see one side, and this is really where the defund the police is coming from, is saying that we need to have serious conversations about how our resources work within our communities. And then you have an entire side that's like, nope, what it needs to be is, you know, people need to have their rights to have guns, and cops need to be able to defend citizens. And so that's where you have this up-ramping and escalation. If both sides are just continued armed, then that's what you're going to get, is people killing each other. And it's too bad that's where we're at. But hopefully there'll be more legitimate policy conversations. You're seeing it start. There
was a great example of this in Loveland, Colorado. The news came out the other day that this lady with mental health issues forgot to pay at a store, and then
I saw it, horrible,
and they tackled her and shit. And it's like, you need a social worker out there to. She
had dementia. She forgot to pay for $14 worth. They tackled her ground and break her shoulder.
Police and then, like, again, to be sympathetic to the police, why does somebody who signs up and says, I want to serve and protect my community, why am I going out there to respond to this? I'm not trained to do that. I'm trained to catch bank robbers and shit or whatever. You know, like, we should have these people who are properly trained in the ability to do this, and then be able to give this person support, as opposed to punishing her for having fucking dementia. And so this is what we're talking about when we're talking about defunding the police. It's about taking some of that budget and giving it to social workers.
Yeah, and there's this you know, these memes or whatever going around of like two cops laughing and being like, they say that like they want social workers to show up and like, let's see what happens, or like you know, cops watching social workers trying to deal with like a mentally ill, violent person or something, like, you know, basically, or the narrative is like, let's see these social workers who wants to, and like there's these responses from social workers who are like, that's what I do fucking literally every day. That is what I do.
Too.
And nurses, that is my job. That is my job. I already do this. Like,
and by the way, I haven't shot anybody doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And it has
makes
to go
me wonder, like, why they didn't send a paramedic or something for that situation that happened in Loveland, Colorado. You know, send paramedics.
Well, I mean,
police.
That's the thing. They did afterwards, but it's snap judgment, right? And that's what cops have to do on a regular basis. And so there is training that needs to happen on their end too, because they will, even if we had, you know, as much money as we could to fund social workers to really help in situations like that, a lot of the times the cops would still be the first ones that are going to be called, and they'll have to make a decision that, you know, this person may not be right. I should probably be doing something else besides throwing them to the ground and arresting them, right?
Maybe the problem also is capitalism, and $12 isn't really worth a person with dementia's, you know, being tackled and whatever. But
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
another part of this conversation.
Maybe part of the solution, and we'll see like what comes of like Joe Biden's and the Democrats' bill for some of these reforms, but maybe one of the solutions would be like having a social worker read in the car, in the unit, you know.
Yeah.
Every call.
There's ways to redo it where you have multiple qualified people that are working together at any given time.
Yeah.
I also
doesn't have to be siloed into different areas of funding and siloed into different areas of response.
Also, another part of this is like, let's all take some personal responsibility. And maybe if like an old lady walks out and forgets to pay for $12, maybe and I don't know the particulars, but if this is the case, your first call should not be the police in that situation. Like, maybe you can talk to her yourself, or did you get a license plate or whatever? Or like, you know, a lot of times the police are called to situations that they don't necessarily need to be responding to, and then things escalate quickly, sometimes because people get freaked out when they see the police coming. And so like part of this is have a little bit of the cops maybe shouldn't be your first call. And there are resources. I saw an infographic recently. I can go and try and find it so we can post it to the website, of all the different numbers that you can call in Denver that are not the police to help with different types of issues going on in your community. Yeah. And so
it's a fair point too.
You know, educate yourself about who you can call and in what particular situations you should be calling.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, John. And also, this is like on the point on capitalism. It's like if you look study some of the history of where the police force like came out of and what its role was, it's a lot, and how it's historically been used. Like it is a lot to uphold capitalism and make sure that, and like, you know, these are things you can look very basically at, like protests often target things that impact economics, and then the cops come in to stop that. Right? Like you're blocking a fucking oil tanker from docking. Literally, like to stop for whatever reason. Let's say this is an example of what happened in Oakland. It was an Israeli ship and they were blocking it too. And they were successfully turning that shit around. By the way, this was like 5 years ago, I think. Yeah, docking had to go all the way back. But which is hilarious. But the like what happens in those situations? Like what's happening? There's no violence happening. But why do the cops come in? Because the cops are also used to uphold the capitalist system. That is also part of their things, right? Like law and order, right? What does that mean? A lot of the time, the order part is making sure that the economics are working, so that the rich people continue to get rich. That's what it's really like. Well, Standing Rock, right? Yeah. Like why is that a thing? Oh, because they're money.
Yeah. It's too bad that the conversation is often too much like, oh, what's more important, human life or property?
Yeah.
And what does our society stand for more?
Yeah. Totally.
And you see that often. I was going to ask, did you guys happen to see that the Supreme Court turned down a gun case today?
Oh no, I did not.
Oh,
which is pretty interesting. It actually, I was surprised since the conservative turn on the court. I thought they would take it up. I think a lot of Second Amendment people thought they'd take it up, but kind of the gist of it, which is, I think probably scared some of the justices in the current political climate that they might be making a decision that would affect a lot of potential gun either reform or help reform. But basically it was that like people who have been pulled over or who have evaded taxes are in certain states not allowed to buy guns. Like you're not allowed to buy a gun if you have a speeding ticket or like a parking violation, or if you've evaded federal tax, you're not allowed to do it. So like non-felony stuff that you're not allowed to buy a gun, which is interesting. I don't know if I necessarily agree with those types of anti-gun legislations. I definitely agree with like getting AR-15s right off the street and stopping people, but like
red flag laws with
red flag, exactly, mental health laws, stuff like that. Like if somebody was like, "Oh, you got a speeding ticket, you're not allowed to buy a hunting rifle," I don't know about that, but it was interesting. It was interesting to me that the Supreme Court turned it down today. I was.
Can you remind me? I think the process is any justice can like quote unquote nominate a case for consideration, and then it's a majority vote about whether to take it up. Is that right? Do you know off the top of your head?
I'm not sure how that works.
I don't think they have to be nominated. I think there's a docket that is there, and eventually they have to vote on one.
So they can. There's other means by which they can be presented to the court, but one of them is that really, I'm just curious where Roberts voted, because my guess is Roberts voted against it because Roberts didn't want to get the court involved.
I didn't see how the vote came down by lines, but
okay, and I don't even know if that is how it happens. I'm pretty sure.
I feel like it is a simple majority.
I think it's a simple majority.
4 of the 9 need to agree.
4.
Oh, 4 of the 9.
Interesting. Okay. So the minority on the court.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So at least one of the more conservative justices jumped.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it could have been 2 if Roberts was sat on the right.
I'm almost. Yeah. I would put money on Roberts saying no.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, shall we transition over to some updates on our dear activist in prison here in Russia?
Dear activist, that sounds like too dear leader for me in this context, but I bet I know what you're saying.
Agreed, Tyler. Yeah.
our comrade.
That's perfect. Yeah, because as we talked about, like, and I'm sure some people who are not close listeners to this would roast us on our love for Navalny, but it is always, like I said recently on another podcast, we're always making judgments compared to the alternatives. So, like, is Navalny awesome, independent of everything? No, he is not. Neither are any of our leaders who we've ever had.
Neither am I.
Neither are any of us.
But you have to make judgment points at some call, and a lot of people would be better than Putin.
Yeah, exactly. Putin, not very good.
Coach. Put me in.
Tyler, I think you'd be better than Putin. I'll just give you that.
Thank you. I think so too.
I just don't know if the people of Russia would be too fond of some American with long hair becoming president.
Tyler, I don't think you're czar-ish enough.
I have to shave my head at the very least.
I just don't think you're.
You wouldn't have to do too much. Just get. I mean, it couldn't be as long as it is, but like Peter the Great, he had a pretty good beard.
Yeah.
Maybe you could join forces with that guy who lives in Siberia.
I was gonna say, dude, you kind of look like Rasputin.
You probably should have been born in Russia, but
I don't know how that should work.
I mean, you can be like, what was it, William of Orange, right?
Yeah, there you go. I mean, hey, I was going to try to make a really nice transition with ships because I was talking about the Chargo, the Israeli ship again. Then I was going to make it so that there are ships that have been now moved into, what is it, the
just
Black
around
Sea.
Crimea.
Yeah, the Black Sea, right?
It's from the Caspian to the Black, or vice versa.
Right. But basically, now, in addition to all of the troop buildup along the Ukrainian border, now we're getting a Russian-Ukrainian border. Now we're getting ships as well.
Yes.
So
it makes sense, from the Russian government standpoint. It's a warm water port. They want that.
Well, I mean, this is part of an escalation.
Oh yeah. Oh, I wasn't trying to downplay the escalation. I was just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, this is concerning. The U.S. or Biden and Putin had a call the other day, and I would recommend everybody read the wording of the readout. It's very funny. It's very diplomatic. But it's like they talked about, general Russian U.S. interests, and also President Biden warned unequivocally against Putin's use of force in Ukraine. It's good stuff. But this is something that I want to be clear about again, that we're not necessarily saying like, oh my God, war is imminent, but this is a move on the chessboard that is significant enough to pay attention to, especially in the context of what's happening with Navalny, because they're likely connected. A lot of times when there's internal turmoil, dictators try and turn attention outward.
Yeah, 100%.
So we could be seeing that, but it is very, very important that we keep an eye on this, because it would obviously be real bad if some war broke out more than we've seen in the Ukraine or on the eastern or the east side of Europe.
Yeah, and I mean, like it's in a direct response to Trump's smaller support for NATO and his idealism of how the United States should act in Europe. There was a vacuum that really Putin saw. So yeah, there are domestic situations that could influence how bold he's trying to be, but part of it is also based on the last 4 years of American foreign policy and how we decided to set ourselves up. So, yeah, there needs to be a little more pushback from the Biden administration, which, the call was diplomatic, I'm sure, but
we're sending troops back to Germany.
Exactly. There's a bigger response to it because Biden actually supports our European allies.
Yeah, and I think my guess would be, I am obviously not a Russia hand, but my guess would be it has a lot more to do with internal Russian things than an opportunity with NATO. I don't think that we've seen, like, we have enough deterrence in Europe, even with the erosion that Trump oversaw, that I think we're mostly okay there. It might have made, I think what we really did is we lost an opportunity to contain Russia. So, I mean, maybe you get to there. But I think this particular troop movement has a lot more to do with Navalny and Putin trying to distract from there.
I can see that. Yeah, there's opportunity is what I was getting at. I think there was more opportunity in Eastern Europe than there would have been given a different president the last 4 years. And so, but it's certainly concerning. And what'll be very interesting is that if Navalny does die in the next 5 days, 10 days, next week, what's going to happen to the internal politics there, right? Do you see people taken to the streets? Do we see, the power vacuum? Because there's a couple different vying powers and competing parties that are against Putin. What really happens, Navalny was kind of the poster child, right? But he was a little bit kind of an independent in between a bunch of different resistant parties.
But he's one of, a number that have been killed or potentially killed by Putin as well. Right. So we've kind of gone down the line here.
Does the crackdown continue? Does he die? Does protests happen? And does Putin then become more aggressive in the Ukraine? Right. More aggressive in the East? It's possible. Certainly possible.
We should definitely see a U.S. response. I believe we unfurled some sanctions, but I would like to see some, if Navalny dies, I would like to see some pretty serious reaction from the United States.
Yeah. And I mean, it's going to be really, it's sad to see it happening. But this whole tension, if he does pass away, this whole tension between the inner and outer conflicts, right? Like there's nothing like that brings a country together than like a war or some shit. But at the same time, I'm like, how many times can you play that card, Putin? Like, this is not the first time that there's been this move towards Crimea, and so I wonder if it would be how successful that would be also.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it worked for Stalin for decades.
Guess that's true.
So I wouldn't say that necessarily the Russian the oligarchic powerhouse that is Russia, I wouldn't say that it's that much different than what Stalin was dealing with, and that shit worked for years. So,
yeah, let's get another long telegram, baby. Let's do it.
I would like to see once Putin moves once all the troops are over there, then that's when the people have the revolution.
Yeah. Keep moving him away from Moscow.
Yeah. Keep moving him out. Go for it. Move him on.
We shall see. It is, this is something that I don't think is getting enough attention in Western media, from what I can tell. And so, this is something listeners to keep an eye on, because I think this is, one of those things where this tends to happen in foreign policy or big events in the world, where it's kind of like, how could this happen? How could this happen? There's no way this is going to happen. And all of a sudden it happens, and then it looks totally inevitable from the other side of the event. And so, these are one of those things that in retrospect makes it look inevitable. And so part of the way we prevent it from happening is understanding those telltale signs and calling them out, and hopefully de-escalating tensions like we should be doing both in the United States and between countries and the United States itself.
Mm-hmm. Hey, and if this was a heavy episode, Well, I don't know when you're going to be listening to this, but I hope you did or enjoy, or at least in the spirit of 420, which is tomorrow, the highest of the high holidays. So everyone, please make sure to take care of head amongst all these hard times as we continue to wander into the age of Aquarius abyss that is 2021 so far.
That's right.
And
That's right.
everybody,
Smoke a little
especially
weed, celebrate Hitler's birthday. You know, do all the fun stuff on 420.
Okay, all right.
Can we,
No.
I always have to throw it out. You know.
well, now we can't have an ending.
Yeah.
Because how am I supposed to Godspeed on Hitler's birthday?
Hey, you can.
I think you just did.
No.
That'll be it. Just cut it there. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
You can say,
There's no coming back from that. I had a perfect one with Tyler, and then Kelly comes in and he's like, "Oh, let me be Diablo's advocate and blow everything up."
yeah.
I mean, if you guys don't want that, then you can just say, John, just say what you have to say. But what I was going to say is
it's
that
already gone. I've already forgot it.
fair enough. I was going to say smoking weed is actually throwing it in Hitler's face anyway.
Yeah, I was going to
Probably make
say,
him
what do you want
turn
to
in his
celebrate
grave.
Hitler's birthday and also the anniversary of Columbine? But you know what? You can throw it into Hitler's face by just eating some meat because he was vegan.
Godspeed, everybody.
Oh, God.
Was he really a vegan?
So good. So good.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a thing. Let's see. Was Hitler a vegan?
let's say it and then fact check it after.
Oh, I think maybe he was just a vegetarian. Let's see.
That's close enough. that
Yeah, he
it's
was a
fine.
vegetarian. He was a vegetarian.
It's close enough. It's close enough.
Well,
There's this
yeah.
whole thing
Do
around
you
white
want me to-
supremacy and veganism. Do you know about this? There's this like whole fucking
No.
thing. Yeah, there's this whole thing.